As always, on Red views and opinions expressed throughout the broadcast day are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, its board, its underwriters, its hangers on, or anyone else involved. Thank you so much for joining us. Our phone number is 923-3911, where you are to be calling soon with your memories of Dr. Peat. And here's our theme song.
Well, welcome to this month's Ask Your Herb Doctor, November the 17th, 2023 edition. My name's Andrew Murray.
My name's Sarah Johannesson Murray. Welcome.
You're listening to Ask Your Herb Doctor on KMUD Garberville 91.1 FM and on the web at www.kmud.org. We're also live streaming this program to our Western Botanical Medicine YouTube channel, so you can listen live right now on our channel by searching Western Botanical Medicine in the search bar on YouTube and click on the live stream. Tonight's radio show is a break from the endocrinology series that we've been doing to honor Dr. Peat again. So it's November of 23, and we did our first tribute to Dr. Peat when he passed away November of 22. And hopefully there amongst the stars and the bright light, his soul will continue. But I know that his life and works impacted so many people, and I think that's the purpose of any one of our lives here on earth, is to positively impact other people for good. He was so anti-corruption, and he was so keen to expose the truth in science and in fact for people to hear the truth that sometimes it seemed incredulous. I was just reflecting on the radio shows that we had done with Dr. Peat since 2008 when we first met him, and there's over 136 radio shows that we have recorded with him, the bulk of which, except some of those that happened during COVID, which are still yet to get put up, are on our website, westernbotanicalmedicine.com, under the Ask Your Herb Doctor link. So those 136 or more 1-hour shows that Dr. Peat was just very much altruistic in his whole perspective on life, and bringing people the truth and not charging money. It was definitely not very financially motivated. He loved what he did, and he was just very much immersed into it, and he was probably one of the greatest minds that I've ever had the pleasure of speaking to. So this month's radio show is another tribute to Dr. Peat and his work. He's not with us anymore, but we are continuing the legacy. So having spent the last 14 years working very closely with him, and pretty much there weren't too many days that went by that we didn't phone him and didn't speak to him about clients and patients. So from January this year, we've continued doing radio shows around the topic of endocrinology. That was his specialty: hormones, thyroid hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and then a wealth of other subjects health related. So it's a tribute to Dr. Peat, and we sent out a kind of broadcast flyer to people if they wanted to share any of their anecdotal history, and that's basically what the whole show's about for this next hour. So people are invited to call in any point in time from now on. We welcome any of you who've been touched by his philosophy and his approach to medicine. And the number here is 707-923-3911. So the lines are now open. I see there is already a caller. So let's take this first caller. Caller, you're on the air. Where from? What's your question, or what's your what would you like to share?
Hi, this is Juanita from Reno. I was seen by a doctor that was a friend of Dr. Peat's, and he recommended some of Dr. Peat's material to me years and years ago. Did you want me to give more details?
Hi,
Sure.
Hi, Juanita. Thank you for calling in. Can you please tell me what year that was that you were a patient of a friend of Dr. Peat's?
It was Dr. Gamby, and I'm thinking it was around about 1981 or 82, somewhere in there.
Yes, please. Can you tell us a story about how you first heard of Dr. Peat in 1982?
I had some depression, anxiety, fear after the birth of my first child, and it continued for quite a while. It lasted probably a total of about 5 years, but after about 3 years, I had seen another medical doctor in a different town where I was living. He just wanted to put me on Elavil and told me that's just the way I was. I did ask for a hypoglycemic test, glucose tolerance, and he reluctantly ordered it and then told me that that it was okay. And then I was kind of embarrassed and intimidated, so I didn't go to another doctor again for about 3 years. Then I heard Dr. Gamby, and so I went to him.
And
He was a friend of Dr. Peat.
and where was Dr. Gamby at that time? Where were you living at that time?
Eugene, Oregon. And I did go see Dr. Gamby, and I was just bowled over by his kindness. He listened, he nodded his head, and he kind of would mutter something about, well, yeah, that's a symptom of this or that, as he was listening to me. And it was like he wasn't saying it, was just in my head. And so I started crying, and he was handing me tissues, and I was just so relieved that a doctor was actually listening to me. And that was only the second doctor that I'd gone to, because I had been embarrassed by the first one. And so I thought, well, if it's just in my head, I can deal with it. I never took the Elavil. I flushed it down the toilet. But anyways,
Good job.
He asked if I had ever had a hypoglycemic glucose tolerance test, and I said yes, and that this other doctor had ordered it, but everything seemed to be normal apparently. So he had me fill out paperwork, and he sent for the results. And I was nowhere in the normal range anywhere on that test. It was low. It was always below the normal range.
Sorry, Juanita, can I interrupt you for a moment? Do you have the live stream or the radio playing or something? Because there's a lot of feedback.
I don't have anything playing here.
Are you on a speakerphone or?
Oh, yeah. You want to take it off a speaker?
Yes, please, if you don't mind, just so we can hear you a little clearer.
Is that better?
Yes, that does sound better. Thank you, Juanita.
You're welcome. So anyway, he's told me that, I did have hypoglycemia, and he recommended that I buy a book called Nutrition for Women by Dr. Ray Peat. And I still have that book, and it has a lot of articles about good information about all kinds of conditions that women have, menstrual, breast pain, arthritis, stress, immunity, fatigue. And Dr. Gamby at that time told me to take B complex, a very high amount of B complex, which I did, and I took it after he told me to until I started seeing you guys.
Let's see, what year was that you first came to see us?
Well, I think it was around 18 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
19.
And that was when I had first started working with Dr. Peat. And when you first consulted with us, you were so surprised that we were working with Dr. Peat because you had worked with Dr. Gamby, who had worked with Dr. Peat. And it was just such a beautiful coincidence.
Yes. It was actually kind of reassuring that I was heading in the right direction. after my experience with Dr. Gamby. And we had, in the meantime, moved to Reno, so I had lost that contact.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Juanita.
Did you? I have another story about Regina, but it's not so much Dr. Peat. It's more with what Western Botanical has done for her.
Well, if you'd be happy to share that, that would be great, and I can put in how Dr. Peat helped me with helping her.
Okay, Regina is my daughter-in-law, and she started having seizures. She had passed out a few times when she was younger. Her mom had her tested, and they didn't find anything that they thought was causing it, but it wasn't real significant. But it continued to escalate, and finally she was having grand mal seizures, and they were so bad she couldn't drive for about 3 months at a time after each one. Her stomach was always upset. She had to stop. Her husband's a minister. She had to stop going to youth camps and church things with him because she might have a seizure, and it just wasn't, her life was just kind of like, from seizure to seizure. And so somebody told us about you guys that had their son had an experience with you guys. And so I called you, and you told me, well, I need to talk to Regina because if she's not willing to change her diet, then it's not going to do any good. And you called us. We had a conference call. And when she explained her symptoms and what was going on, the first thing you said was, high estrogen causes epilepsy. And she had just gotten some lab results because after she'd been diagnosed with after the seizure, she went to a neurologist and had been diagnosed with epilepsy and was on Delanton. And he had ordered some labs, and her estrogen was flagged by the labs as it was off of the chart in their lab. But he said, don't worry about it. So she asked her gynecologist, and she said, don't worry about it. So that didn't seem to be a concern to anybody. And of course, we didn't know any better. But Gina was very willing to try what you guys were telling us about, because you said if we weren't willing to do the diet, that it wouldn't do any good. And so we drove the 7.5 hours over there and consulted, and she started in, and I think with your training and your help, she was able, it took her about a year to get off of Delanton, if I remember correctly. And she continues to still have a seizure once in a while, but not nearly as often as, before they were just breaking through like every 2 or 3 months, even with the Delanton. And they had raised the Delanton to 500 milligrams a day. And I think 600 was about the top that they could give her, but she was at 500. And she was having all kinds of side effects from that. But she changed her diet at your recommendations, and from your consulting with Dr. Peat, she did the testing for thyroid levels, and you guys gave her really good advice. And she's the only epileptic that I know that had grand mal seizures that is completely off of any kind of neurological drug, and she controls it with her diet.
Yeah, and I just want to say that when you first contacted me, I said, well, I can definitely help you with herbs, but I'm working with this brilliant doctor who can help her with the diet. And I think together she can come off her epileptic drugs, and she can be free of seizures for the most part.
And she has been. She has been. Even more so as years have gone by. I don't think she's had a seizure now for about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And usually those are under like maybe a lot of stress and maybe some diet interruptions or something.
And my understanding is Delanton and the other seizure medications are actually really, really horrible and affect your day-to-day life in a lot of ways. Is that accurate?
Oh, it was terrible. The doctor even told her, he said, well, with Delanton, you wake up, and he said, you just wake up stupid. And so she would try to do something like, say, make coffee, and she would maybe forget to put the grounds in. So she'd start over, and then she'd, maybe forget. She might get it all together, but forget to turn it on. I mean, it was just in the morning when she would first get up, she had this really awful time. And then she has a sensitive stomach anyway, and the Delanton made that 10 times worse. And she never really felt good. And she was always thinking, well, maybe I'm allergic to this or I'm allergic to that. And she would try eliminating it, and then she would still feel the same way. And we didn't know what to do. We had no clue. We just didn't know what to do. I didn't know that you could treat epilepsy other than with, pharmaceutical drugs. So it was such a relief to find you guys, because she couldn't attend Bible camps with her husband. She couldn't drive her kids to music lessons or soccer. I was filling in for her with all those things, but those are things that, you're missing out on your children's lives.
Exactly.
And so it was just a joy to finally get her to where she could live again and start taking part in all the things that she'd had to quit.
Yep, he was a godsend.
Well, thank you so much, Juanita, for calling in and sharing yours and your daughter-in-law's story, Regina. And I really appreciate that.
We're very, very appreciative of you guys and the good results that she's had and that I've had too, because I follow the diet. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for your call.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so let's just put this out again. Whoever's listening, we're taking calls from now until 8 o'clock. The number is 707-923-3911. There's lots of chatter going on the live stream, and I know that we sent out a request earlier on if people wanted to call in. So just going back to the very beginning of what we found in 2008, this treasure, just kind of buried there because nobody knew about Dr. Peat at that point in time, and the internet really wasn't that prominent. I know YouTube had probably just started gaining traction, and the internet in general had kind of just started to take off, and people were on devices, and I think iPhones were just starting to come out, but nobody knew Dr. Peat. I mean, when you couldn't find anything. If you Google Dr. Peat, you wouldn't find a thing. So let me take this next caller. Caller, you're on the air. Where are you from, and what have you got to share?
Hey, Andrew. It's
hey, good evening.
to you and Sarah. So lovely. It's just a gift to get to. I first Ray when I probably
caller. You're cutting in and out a lot. If you're on a cell phone, is there a better place you could maybe talk from, or if you're talking through your computer, maybe you have a connection issue?
On a
Yeah, we're having a really hard time hearing you.
Like every third syllable cuts out.
Oh, well, hold on a second.
Yeah, we'll wait for you to get a better signal if that's what the issue is, but we'll sit tight.
Is that?
No. Carry on. Yeah, carry on. Say something.
Okay. Is that better?
Well, I heard, is that better? But then you cut out.
Okay. Well, let me back on a different line.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Okay, no problem. We'll wait on that. So, as I said, back in 2008, when we first came into contact with Dr. Peat, it was through a breast cancer survivor whose daughter had gotten diagnosed with breast cancer, and that was the very first time we'd ever heard the name Dr. Peat. And like I said, you couldn't find him anywhere. Well,
apart from his website, he did have a website.
Okay. He had a
in 2008, but I couldn't find very many external links or mention of his name online in 2008. I know there were people I've talked to people like the client Juanita who just called in. She had been working with Dr. Gamby in the 80s, who was working with Dr. Peat. So obviously he's been busy working away all these years. But when you searched on Google or you did an internet search, it was hard to find him listed. And we're so delighted that now on Twitter, on YouTube, there's just so many wonderful ways to hear Dr. Peat.
Yeah. Okay. So 2008, that was the first experience. He came on the radio show and he did a program specifically on polyunsaturated fats. And it was kind of mind blowing because even with our kind of herbal medicine degree in England, which was a 4-year full-time degree that you did once you got your prerequisites done, you did a 4-year university program. We were taught fish oil was good for you. We were taught sugar was bad for you, salt was bad for you, and all these things that he just exploded as completely untrue. And okay, Corley, let's take this call and let's see if we've got better reception. Go ahead.
Hi, Andrew. Is that better?
I think it could be. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I first met Ray when I was about 30, and I was a vegan at the time and freezing and had low thyroid and everything. And Ray just set me straight and told me pretty much everything I was eating was not working.
Right.
And then about 7 years ago, I had major health issues, and Ray saved my life. And something that Ray did, which I haven't ever shared with anyone, is he actually worked with my doctor. He did phone calls with my doctor to help my doctor understand what was happening. And which was
What year was this?
That was 2016. Yeah, and he did three-way phone call. My doctor explained what he thought was happening, what he thought was the best way to treat it, and I thought, hey, Ray, I need to be here.
What an open-minded doctor too,
He was amazing. And he actually had heard about Ray from several of her patients, and at one point she said, I defer to him. She said, because he knows more than me.
Yeah.
Which was pretty vulnerable, but it was so loving of Ray to do that, and so vulnerable. And I've often thought about that, and about just the love and the caring to do something like that. And what I found to be true from being friends with Ray was his relationship with his wife, Catherine, because she adored him. And we got together several times, and just to see how much love and caring and how she felt about him. She calls him Raymond. And just when she would say his name, you could feel her love. And, I think about, Ray, like you said, like fish oils and sugar and all these things, and about estrogen and thyroid. These were so radical. Like, how could a person be brave and tell the truth all the time? And as I got to know Ray and Catherine, I realized it was because the love he had in his life. I think that if you have a lot of love around you, you can be brave because you have that love. And so, I know oftentimes people don't know that much about, Ray's personal life or Catherine or anything, but he really had a good life.
Yeah, I've never met anybody, I think, who has just given so much. And he was just so passionate about it that I think all the time he was by his computer and he was searching stuff, and he was it was just like a bookworm, an old-fashioned bookworm, with a head in a book. His head was in the computer, and he was searching abstracts and articles, and I don't think there was anything that I ever asked him about that he didn't have an answer for. He was incredible. I mean,
No, he did tell me one time. he said, I still haven't figured out a couple things. Because I think I said to him, I said, is there anything you don't know, Dr. Peat? And he said, well, I don't understand why cats purr.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, he had,
and he also said, I don't understand why we yawn. There were two things he told me.
Oh, I wish I'd known that. I read somewhere once that people yawn because you're trying to get more oxygen.
I think that's the commonly accepted theory for it. But hey, we're not in a position to refute it at this point. So just go ahead, and now you've called in. What's one of the most relevant things that he's helped you with, or he helped you with back then when you were consulting with the doctor through him?
Well, the biggest thing that Ray helped me with was sugar. You know, I had been someone who had, like, I could go years and not touch sugar. And I did all the diets and everything. And he was the first person that I said to him, I know you won't believe me, but I probably only eat about 500 calories a day and I can't lose weight. And he said, oh, no, of course. Someone with a low thyroid, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that was revolutionary for me, because anyone else I ever spoke to, they'd look at me and they'd go, oh, my God, you're overweight. You must eat this. And, you know, I wasn't.
Right.
And that was revolutionary. And when he talked to me about eating sugar, and I would say, are you sure, Ray? Is it really all right to eat sugar? And he'd say, yes. Is it really all right to drink orange juice? Yes. You really need it. And that was life-changing for me. You know, besides about estrogen and my thyroid and everything. Mm-hmm. But just that level of acceptance from someone to who you say, like, no, I don't overeat, and, you know, I do everything and I'm not losing weight, it was so healing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I know. And a lot of times I think people don't understand that if you eat sugar or honey without the starchy carbohydrates, like the flours and everything else it goes with, and you just have it with your coffee or with your milk or added to your orange juice, if you just add sugar or honey to those items that don't have that starch there, it doesn't feed the bacteria in your small intestine, and it doesn't cause the feeding of an overgrowth of yeast organisms and candida, because it's absorbed in the stomach and there's nothing left when it enters the small intestine. And that is what Dr. Peat was meaning when he was saying eat sugar. He wasn't saying go eat cakes and cookies and candy bars. You know, he was suggesting that you use it as a fuel, as a carbohydrate fuel. And he told me one time, he said, well, how do you think the pyramids were built? He said the Egyptians had discovered sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember recently coming across something somewhere that he wrote, that he was talking about every great civilization that was innovative and intellectual, they all ate sugar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, still every day you see on the internet somewhere, don't eat sugar, don't eat sugar.
It's a cult.
And, you know, it's still out there. And when I think about the impact on women and the misinformation that women get, and, you know, friends of mine that have had females that have had health problems, and the misinformation, the things that they're told, it's sorrowful. Yeah. But what I also want to say that I think is really important, since Ray has left the physical plane, is there's so many people now talking about Ray and his ideas, and places like Ray Peat's Forum, as an example. Even though there's, you know, sometimes there's things there that are inaccurate, there's a love there of people wanting to help each other and people caring, and like the work that you and Andrew do, that Ray's work is continuing, and the love that he started is still ongoing. And I think, like, what a wonderful thing to think about your life, that you started all this and it's continuing. And, you know, I know how important it is, the work that you and Andrew do. I lean on it. And, you know, so many other people that are sharing Ray's information. It's beautiful. And even though I know sometimes there's inaccuracies and things like that, but the love is still there, and people wanting to help each other. And I really think that's good, especially now in our world where we need more love.
Yep. Can't get enough.
He said Dr. Peat said a really good example of sharing information and caring for people, truly caring. He truly cared For every
Oh, my
client
gosh.
I would ever talk to him about, he truly cared and he wanted to help.
Oh, yeah, he did.
He
He
wanted to
did.
help everybody. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good example he set for all of us practitioners who use his wonderful advice, and for people that are trying to help themselves from his advice. You know,
Yes.
it really, the love spreads.
Yes, and there, sometimes, just because he had that information, it was his choice as a person to share it, to be that kind of human being. He didn't go, "Oh, I've learned this and I'm going to keep it to myself." He was gracious giving.
Yeah.
I have a friend who says gracious giving is when you give a part of yourself when you give, and Ray practiced gracious giving. He was always, if I'd have a phone call with him an hour later, I'd get an email, "Oh, here, I want to tell you this." And just, it was so beautiful. And I think he was a happy person because of that. Even though he didn't get the recognition that he deserved, and certainly monetarily, but he was happy. He was fulfilled because he was.
He wasn't interested in that. He just wanted to just be on the phone, talk to people, and share what he knew. That's the bottom line. He was not at all financially motivated. I can be assured of that. Well, thank you so much for calling in and sharing. I just want to make sure that people that are waiting get a chance to share also. But thanks so much for saying what you've said about him in remembrance of him.
So a caller would like the spelling of Dr. Peat's last name so that they can find stuff online.
Okay. It's well, his website is www.raypeat.com, and that's RAY, and then the name is Peat, PEAT, like Pete Moss.com. So PEAT, RAYPEAT. And now that we're talking about his website, it is in the process of being updated, and you can't order books or newsletters on the website at the moment, but you can now email raypeatpublishing@gmail.com to order books and order newsletters. And please remember, all of this copyright material is protected, and please respect the copyright, because he's dead, but his copyright is not.
And I foolishly said I'd ask a quick, easy herb question for you guys. Well, maybe easy because you're smart herb people. Blood coagulant herbs. Someone had an operation or something, and they want herbs that will thicken the blood. And of course, you caller, you're probably listening in, and you should always, I should have said no, because you should always really be available to get more information, because whatever they tell you no is not as good as the information you would get if you actually let them ask you a few questions. But here it is, guys. Blood thickening herbs, please.
Yeah.
Well, can I?
All
Sorry.
right, I'll say my piece after you say yours.
So vitamin K is amphoteric. Vitamin K2, it helps to keep the blood from being too thick and too thin. So that is the one supplement.
In terms of regulating platelet activation factor and those other clotting cascades.
Yes, and CoQ10 is a precursor for your body. K2, sorry, is a precursor for your body to make its CoQ10. So a vitamin K2 and CoQ10 are what I would call amphoteric. They'll help keep your blood healthy.
And what herb or food sources have a lot of K2?
Vitamin K2 is found highest in green leafy vegetables such as kale. Kale is king. Also in nettle leaf, and you can get some of that through making nettle leaf infusion. But really, kale is probably higher in vitamin K2. You do need to be careful with kale because it is very thyroid suppressive. So you might want to, if you have thyroid issues and you want to eat kale and eat enough to get a lot of vitamin K, then you would need to boil it. I usually boil it for about an hour in order to help make it more digestible and to get more of the vitamins and minerals out. But having said that, there's still not very much in there. If you really need to regulate blood thickness and keeping your blood in a healthy range, you would probably need to supplement with vitamin K2.
And fermented foods have that as well?
Yes, fermented foods do have some vitamin K2 as well.
But as Sarah said, there's a 1 milligram per drop K2 product by a well-known manufacturer. So can easily be found on the internet, folks. So if you type in 1 milligram per drop vitamin K and you expressly look for 1 milligram per drop, you'll find a good company. It's not cheap, but it's very alternative, and one drop will buffer the effects of a 325 milligram aspirin tablet in terms of its, blood thinning, quote unquote.
That will help
effects.
thicken your blood, if you want to say it like that. If aspirin thins your blood, you can take vitamin K2 to help thicken your blood, but it doesn't really
Yeah, it
thicken
doesn't
your
work
blood
like that.
because it's, like I said, amphoteric, so it helps keep it regulated. And the company is Thorne Research. It does come in MCT oil, which a lot of people are allergic to MCT oil, even in the 1 or 2 drops daily. So you have to use about 4 times as much topically if you need 1 drop. So you'd have to use 4 drops topically, rubbed on the inner part of your arm or your inner thighs.
Okay, so we have a couple of callers waiting here. Let's take this next caller. Caller, you're on the air. Where are you from, and what would you like to share?
Hi, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'd like to share a memory that I have with Dr. Peat. I was fortunate enough to speak with him every weekend for about 4 years. That started in 2018, and he just dramatically changed my life. It was a huge blessing that I don't feel like I was deserved to have, but I'm so grateful for him and that relationship. And I would say my most memorable conversation I've ever had with him, probably maybe it was the second to the last conversation I had with him, I think it might have been in September of last year, is I told him that I wanted to one day be able to be of service to potentially families that have children on the autism spectrum and help them out nutritionally somehow with maybe some of the stuff that I've learned. But I said, Dr. Peat, maybe could I just forward people to your email and have you interact with them? And he graciously mentioned that he's a bit too busy for that. But I told him, I said, I feel bad because I'm not courageous enough or strong enough to help in this capacity, because you'd have to reveal a lot of truth about, I've had people tell me that their children have been injured by vaccines and they saw a significant night and day difference before and after, which has led to autism. But his response, which I can almost hear his voice thinking about this, and it just shows a lot of courage, just who he was as a person. I told him I didn't think I was courageous enough to actually spread truth about this. And he said, I actually wrote a note on my phone. Let me just find it real quick. He said, it's not a question about how strong you are. It's not a question about how much courage you have. It's about what needs to get done and what's right. And he basically, and I'm paraphrasing this because this happened a while back, but he basically said that there are a lot of people that have been injured or hurt or just a lot of devastating things that have happened to people's health. And he basically said it's really about doing what's right and helping these individuals that are suffering. And I was blown away by that.
Mm-hmm. It's not a worldly view, is it, perhaps?
Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for him, for everything that he's done. If people haven't started out his nutritional recommendations, I just recommend they just start because it's life-changing. I started that before I even tried supplements, and just his nutritional recommendations have changed my life. And then the last thing that I want to mention is I've come across a book recently, it's a dating book. It talks about how a woman can actually amplify her husband's testosterone levels. And it made me think of Dr. Peat's wife. And I thought, I just know that there's no way that man could have accomplished everything that he's accomplished without a good woman by his side. And I'm just so grateful that he was blessed to have Catherine in his life, because I don't think he would have done nearly what he's accomplished without her.
Yep, it takes 2 to tango. Well, thank you so much for your call. I think we have another caller here waiting on the line. So for people that are listening, it's a tribute to Dr. Peat. It's the first year of his anniversary of his passing, Thanksgiving 2022. The number's 707-923-3911. If people are listening, they want to share their experiences with recommendations that they took from him and how their lives improved thereof, then please go ahead and call 923-3911. So let's take this next caller. Caller, you're on the air. Where from? Where's your question? Hey, we got engineer. Okay, caller, you're on the air, I think. Go ahead. Where are you from, and what would you like to share?
So, Marin County.
Okay, Marin County. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say, without Dr. Peat, I wouldn't have known to get a thyroid panel as a young guy, So seeing what my TSH was, Ray basically influenced me to, take take a moderate dose of thyroid hormone. Energy levels are up. Testosterone, even though it's okay, went up 100 points. He's helped me, give progesterone for my arthritic mother. I've been able to help a lot of people with just his recommendations.
Mhm.
And one thing I want to say about Dr. Peat that I think is really underrated is, with a lot of alternative health stuff, you hear like ancestral diets and stuff like this. But I thought Ray was really good at making people appreciate new world like knowledge, mentioning Cascara Sagrada and Massa Arena and stuff like this. Because
Sorry, Carla, can I interrupt you? We're having a really hard time hearing you. Are you on the speakerphone?
I am not on speakerphone.
Okay, because your signal must be cutting in and out because we're not hearing all of your sentences.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now?
Well, yes, carry on.
Okay. Did you get what I said about the New World?
You were starting to say New World, and he had a way of helping people see something,
okay.
and then I couldn't hear.
Okay, so I just appreciate the fact that Ray opened up the idea that the New World has so much to offer with regards to health, because with a lot of alternative health communities, you hear about like ancestral diet and stuff. But Ray was big on Cascara Sagrada and Massa Arena and stuff like this. I think without him, the New World's contributions to health would be overlooked. Yeah.
Yes, he had an amazing amount of knowledge that he so freely gave.
Yeah, and I think he basically inculcated like a lot of knowledge for a whole new generation, and I think there's like maybe at least 100 of like top minds that are going to be contributing like for the betterment of society. Like we'll see in the next decades.
Yes,
Yep,
I
that's-
believe
God
that.
That's the
willing.
hope. That's the hope.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Okay,
But,
well,
much love for Ray Peat and much love for you guys.
yeah, thank you for your call.
Thank you for calling in.
Okay, so once again, the number here, if you want to call in with any tribute, is 707-923-3911. And the show's running until 8 o'clock. So just to go back over the some of the history with Dr. Peat, looking at the shows that we did with him over those 14 years, some of the kind of groundbreaking things that he brought to light were how toxic the liquid oils were that are ubiquitous in the food supply. So the Criscos and the polyunsaturated fats that the general industry was touting as healthy, how toxic they were, how thyroid suppressive they were. And he brought out plenty of evidence supporting the perceived benefit in psoriasis patients or eczema patients that would experience relief from their inflammation and their itching and their condition by using polyunsaturates or fish oils, as we commonly call them, being some of the worst culprits. Is because they actually downregulated the immune system. So they were very thyroid suppressive and immune suppressive. So whilst that may have been perceived as some kind of a benefit, the toxic effect of it was the reason why somebody felt like they were getting better. So to the detriment of their metabolic rate and their metabolism in general, it was just perceived as being a good thing. But he brought out the science of how dangerous it was, and actually to get to the bottom of someone's psoriasis or their eczema, as a matter of fact, should be the best way of approaching it. So let's just take this next caller. You're on the air, where from, and what would you like to share?
Hi, my name is Brendan. I'm from Humboldt County.
Okay, Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to share that Dr. Peat kind of came to me in a sort of a dreamlike state I was in. I was kind of in a shallow state of dreaming. And it might have been an REM type state. And he just came to me, and I never really had any interactions with him before. But I don't know if any other people that had interactions with Dr. Peat could share this relationship. But
Okay, well,
he just
sorry,
kinda came to me.
sorry, caller, can I stop you right there? Are you?
terrible? Every call has been such a poor call.
I know.
quality.
I'm
don't
sorry,
know,
we're
don't
having
get it.
poor quality here.
I was able to hear that.
I can hear there's nothing but kind of
Oh,
reverberations.
well,
and
he
echoes
feels
and-
that Dr. Pete came to him when he was in sort of a half dream state and was curious if other people had experienced any sort of.
Hmm.
Is that correct, caller? Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, you're correct. And I think I had heard of him before, but I never really knew any relationship to him or actually knew him as Dr. P. But I just woke up and it was kind of like a daydream. I don't recall if I actually went to sleep or it was just during the day. I came out and just felt more full and kind of more energized. And wanting to share that experience. I don't know if anyone else experienced that, but that's just what I had experienced that particular moment about several months ago.
So you're saying you felt like Dr. P appeared to you in a dream several months ago?
Sort of like that. I was just, it's kind of hazy at this point, but I guess he just kind of reached down and touched me in that kind of way. And then I just woke up, appeared, and I was lucid again. I was interacting with the real world, and I just felt a totally different personality and mindset shift.
Wow, that's very interesting. I have had several clients miraculously be cured recently.
Funnily, yeah. Thyroid patients too.
Yeah, thyroid patients who have taken thyroid for
No,
15 years.
That's what I had to share.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, we have a client who has been taking thyroid for 15 years, and they just miraculously were able to come off of it, and they feel totally great.
Well, he'd always said that the body could just continue manufacturing thyroid hormone and that taking a supplementation would not block your thyroid from doing anything again. So it was always there in the background. So there's two more callers lined up. Let's hope that the call quality is better because I can barely make out what people are saying here. Hopefully that's not the way it comes over to people listening. And hopefully on the audio live stream, it's not the way either. But let's take this next caller. Caller, where are you from and what would you like to share?
Hi, my name is Kathy Miller, and I'm from Humboldt County.
Hey, Kathy.
I wanted to say that I really appreciate this show whenever I hear it. However, to be honest, I don't listen to the radio very much at night.
Sure.
But when I did catch this show, I really got a lot out of it. And Dr. Pete confirmed for me that doing the CoQ10 and D2K3 with my condition was right, and I'm really appreciating that. What I wanted to know is what was his view on COVID? And
he had a very, very clear view on COVID, and it's unfortunate that we haven't gotten around to it, if that's the right word. I just get so busy. I've got probably 14 radio shows that we haven't put up on the website yet. From let's see, I started doing the 2020 shows and a couple of 2021 shows. There's the bulk of the rest of 21 and all of 2022. Where he is just completely adamant that the whole COVID thing is pre-manufactured. It's a concerted effort, a Wuhan experiment gone wrong, released to the public, and that the whole spike protein thing was just a big, big, big no-no.
Okay, that's it. And so he advised that you don't take the vaccines.
He was just saying it's an experimental drug, and as such, it had no testing. And people like Dr. Peter McCulloch, a famous cardiologist and a well-published literary giant in the world of safety data and related vaccine adverse events reporting, that was his specialty. He was a vociferous opponent from the very beginning. Okay. And then Dr. Malone, along with McCulloch, once they started publishing data about what was going on with patients when they were complaining of all of the side effects, they started doing research, and sort of Dr. David Martin, he produced massive amounts of data because he was a patent analyst. And so he was looking at all the patents that had been done on these coronaviruses back in 2000 by some pharmaceutical giants, basically positioning themselves to take advantage of something like that with a pre-prepared product. He said it had never been tested, it was totally unsafe, and that people should wait. And that as it had a pretty low mortality, in reality, it was 99.7% survivable. And he said that the data surrounding the deaths was being completely inflated, and the CDC were in cahoots with vaccine manufacturers, and the whole thing was completely rigged. So not to say that people didn't die, people did.
Yeah.
And lots of the causes were later on revealed, and were either ventilation problems where people were poorly treated, and everything else that was around it. So
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So let's take another caller. Caller, you're on the air. Where are you from, and what would you like to share?
I'm calling from Mendocino County, and I'd like to find out the views that you hold about fermented cod liver oil.
Fermented.
Well, the fermentation process does help make the vitamins, that fat-soluble vitamins, more bioavailable. But it is cod liver oil is also high in omega oils, which in the short term can act as anti-inflammatories, but in the long term, they're damaging to your immune system. And that's how they're actually anti-inflammatory, because they're helping to reduce your immune system response. But that then can predispose you to other problems like cancers, because you need your immune system functioning to fight cancer. So, people notice benefit when they use fish oils, and I totally understand why, but it's not safe in the long term. And, they used to use X-ray radiation on people's acne on their back because it's anti-inflammatory and it helps reduce inflammation of the acne, but it also caused a suppressed immune system. So that is our view on fish oils and fermented fish oils.
Wouldn't fermented fish oils be essentially more oxidized because if you're doing
fermented would speed up the oxidation, but then when it goes in your body, you're eating like oxidized fat, so those are inflammatory themselves. And also, if you eat it when it's not oxidized and not fermented, right, like it's fresh, then the oxidation process takes place in your body and robs you of oxygen. So either way, they're not ideal, because if you eat anything that has to oxidize, this is the theory behind why you don't want to eat omega-3s and omega-6s and polyunsaturated fatty acids, is because when they go in your body, they're so hungry and starving for oxygen, they'll rob you of your oxygen and go rancid. And that's why they were used for paint, because they form a resinous surface when they react with oxygen. We have it on the wood in our house. It's beautiful. Forms a lovely resin, a waterproof coating. It belongs there, not inside your arteries and causing plaque in your cardiovascular system. So even if it's fermented, it's still going to have those toxic byproducts of fermentation and oxidation.
Okay, do we have another caller? Are we still waiting for another caller there? No. Okay, so I wasn't sure whether or not we had another one lined up. Okay, so you're listening to Ask Your Herb Doctor, KMUD Garberville, 91.1 FM from now until 8 o'clock. Callers are invited to call in 707-923-3911 to share testimony of how they have been
Till 7:58, actually.
Say again?
Till 7:58. Shiloh's in the chair at 8, starting his show.
All right, well, you got 4 minutes, folks. So otherwise, I will just carry on exposing a few things that I've dug up since. Okay, so as I said, I did 136 radio shows with Dr. Peat, and I know he probably did 10 times that with the group of other peoples that he did Science and Politics show. He did other shows with other radio hosts all across the country, and things that he came up with. He had a very different approach to cancer. It's a kind of hot topic, but for example, using iodine topically on precancerous tissues, things like actinic keratoses and other quote-unquote suspicious skin lesions, has some very personal very successful effects with that, as also treating basal cell carcinomas with dry ice and or progesterone, pre-treatment, caffeine, aspirin, and those kind of other compounds that he had a small kind of formula for that I use personally, and definitely worked. Let's take the next caller. Caller, you're on the air, and I think you've got about 3 minutes before we need to give out details and wrap up the show.
Yeah, right you are. You know, I was thinking about the fatigue. I'm a young pup at 61, and the fatigue that I've been noticing, you know, and I'm thinking COVID, but I've been taking for the last maybe 3 or 4 years the omega-3 and omega-6 vitamins and stuff with my meals, my breakfast, my small breakfast. If I eat too much, I fall asleep. But that's what I was wanting to ask about making you tired. Yeah.
Yes, the omega oils. The omega oils are also thyroid suppressive. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. So they will make you more tired because they'll suppress your metabolism, and your metabolism uses thyroid to help get and deliver oxygen to your cells. Without adequate thyroid hormone, you don't have adequate oxygen to your cells, and therefore your metabolism doesn't work properly. And yes, you do feel tired.
And so with maybe like a normal diet, I don't need the omegas.
Yeah, there's lots of scientific literature to show that those omega oils they really are not essential. And we've never eaten so many omega-6 oils, which are the polyunsaturated fatty acids like canola, soy, corn, because who can make oil out of corn? Who can make oil out of soybeans? It's a process that involves a lot of chemicals and a lot of machinery, and it's not natural. We naturally get oils from animals or from coconuts or from palm fruits or from olives. Those are natural sources of oils, and those are the safe oils.
But,
I'm sorry.
You've done so good. I didn't hear the whole show, but this one really piqued my interest, and thank you so much.
Yeah, it should
thank
be,
you. You
should be up on the internet if you wanted to listen to it.
Yeah, you can listen to our show as the live stream now, or you can listen to it later on our Western Botanical Medicine YouTube channel, and it's also on KMUD Radio Audio Archives.
Okay, well, thanks for the people that have chosen to call in tonight.
And remember, you've got mud in your ear.
That's right. There we go. Well, welcome and thank you to KMUD again. There's a big shout out to KMUD. We've been doing this show since 2003. I looked the other day, and 2003 was when we first started doing our radio shows once a month on the third Friday of every month. So again, once more, to Dr. P out there in the stars, thank you so much for your time here on Earth. And I know lots of people have taken some good advice, and we continue to propagate the truth, and people bear out witness to that in terms of being seriously helped. So you can visit our website, westernbotanicalmedicine.com. We have a YouTube channel and a Twitter feed. And until the third Friday of next month, it'll be real close to Christmas, folks. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. And we can be reached at 1-888-WBM-HERB, Monday through Friday. And also our website address for my email is Andrew@Western Botanical Medicine. So thanks so much for listening. My name's Andrew Murray.
My name's Sarah Johannesson Murray. Happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for listening.
Good night.
Good night.